Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our school board meeting. For all those who are able, if you wouldn't mind please standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have 6 board members present tonight. 5 are in the room and 1 is on Zoom. Logan, could you please identify yourself virtually? Logan, are you there?
He says he can't hear anything. Which one are we going to select there?
Give us just a second. I'll try again.
Testing, testing.
Testing, testing.
It's not on our end.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you. Can you hear me, Logan?
I'm talking.
Logan, can you hear us okay? I think so.
Hello?
He says he can't hear you guys.
Hello?
If you're communicating with him, will you let him know that we can hear him, Jason? Thank you. And if he can check his audio.
My audio is fully on and working on my laptop with other functions.
Well,
Let me just reset my headset 1 second.
I was going to say the other option is for somebody to zoom into him on like
Okay,
their phone.
can
or
you hear me
something
now?
And see if he can hear you.
I guess can talk and still not hear you.
How about now?
We may have to proceed without me, and I will enjoy from YouTube with our audience.
Okay.
How about now, Logan? Any luck there? Check 1, 2.
Nope, I can't hear anything.
Okay. I think unless you
Can
have
Zoom
any,
just from a phone?
you can try. Well, see if he can hear. If it's on his end, it might not matter.
If you all have quorum to proceed with the budget, then I think it's okay if I just follow along with on YouTube. I don't want to delay this.
Okay.
Dr. Phil's, I'll send him the phone number he can use to call in, and then we'll keep it open and see if that works, but otherwise
Okay. I think we also do have to have him on video in order for a vote to count. Mike, if that recollection is correct.
which should be fine.
Okay.
It can still be on the Zoom, it would just be the audio from the Zoom on his phone versus.
Okay. So can we see his video now? We just aren't seeing it? Okay. Okay, just wanted to verify. You want to try a phone as one last option? Nick, is that what you're suggesting? I'm going to give that a minute, because if it...
I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Logan, my birthday is May 27th. What is my birthday?
May 27th.
Very good, okay.
There, I'll prove it's me. There you go.
There we go. Okay. You persevere.
All right,
Dr.
thank you for
Phillips.
your patience, everyone. Each meeting, we like to share our vision, mission, and core beliefs, just to remind us of why we are here. BCSC's vision is that BCSC is the choice to learn, work, and play. Our mission is to develop expert learners by partnering with our community to invest in people. And our core beliefs are that we can all rise to the challenge of high expectations, that learning is most effective when we have choice, flexibility, and see relevance. We thrive when our physical, social, and psychological needs are met, and our community and school district are stronger when we partner with one another. We flourish because of the diversity and variability in our community. And last but not least, considering a big election coming next week, our democracy and democratic institutions are strengthened by civic-minded citizens.
Thank you. First presentation, Dr. Hack.
Good evening, Mrs. Weldon, Dr. Phillips, and board. Thank you very much for letting us present about an amazing opportunity we had just a few nights ago. So if you've been around me or been on my team before, sometimes I say these words, I have a great idea. And sometimes they pan out and sometimes they don't. But this is one that definitely has panned out over 7 years. So I'm excited to turn things over to some fabulous people who do amazing things inside our schools and for this very special night.
Good evening, and thank you for having us tonight. This is a fun thing, and I'm going to take just briefly because I know we're on time. The why of this, from the C4 standpoint, is that we are challenged by the state and federal to help young women move into STEM fields. And this started about 8 or 9 years ago with just a camp we did, and then it started what happens if we have girls, and it's led into that. This could not happen without our volunteers. This could not happen without Davita Harden, and she's going to speak and tell you a little bit about it. And then after that, we're also going to let a couple of students that were students in 5th and 6th grade, but also have come back and helped. And just to let you know, we had close to 60 high school student young ladies that wanted to help Friday night and stayed until 9:30 to help us on this. So it gives us some of the things. So I'd like to introduce Davita.
Hello, and thank you for having me this evening. Super excited about this opportunity. I've had an opportunity to work with it since 2017, and like Dr. Hack had mentioned, the why is for our 5th and 6th grade girls just to see themselves in a STEM field, being able to experience fields that they normally wouldn't have an opportunity to do. And so that partnership is there with the C4 program. We had average anywhere from 120 to 130 girls. There's usually over 100 volunteers there. Just like Dr. Hack said, there was 60 high school girls there. And we have community partners, there's the Columbus Robotics, and then also Cummins, and then our BCSC employees, and then community members. So it's a huge opportunity just to be able to have everyone in the community involved. The win, we normally have it the 3rd Friday of every October. They're at Columbus North in the C4 wing. As I mentioned, we have community partners. Each year, Cummins and Columbus Robotics brings in their robots and just hands-on experiences. So when the girls first come in, they register, they can participate in these activities there, and then they have dinner. We bring them back into the cafeteria, and we start off with a song just to pump them up and everything, and then we dismiss them to go into their actual sessions. This year, one of the really neat things was, normally we offer 8 sessions. This year we were able to offer 9 actual sessions, and so we break the girls down to where they can participate in 3.
On Friday, October 25th, Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation.
Thank you. Slides aren't moving.
Oh. Can I go ahead and move
We go forward or back?
forward? Oh, okay. I apologize. Okay, this is where we were talking about the community events. So as you can see in the pictures from previous years, the girls are there in the cafeteria. They're experiencing the hands-on things that are in the actual area. One year, Toyota was there with their VR. And so the girls just, they get pumped up before they ever go back to their sessions. It's really just cool to feel the energy that happens in the room itself. These are the past events that we've had since 2007, and you can see the attendance of the participants that were there. And usually we try to find a theme that just really resonates what's going on and how we can focus on getting those girls involved into the STEM events. We have the Yes We Can. I'm not going to read all of them for you, but each and every one of them. This year we had Sheroes of STEM. In front of you, you see a poster from this year, and we can just, this year's theme was just seeing how you yourself can be a hero in STEM, regardless if you thought that you could, but we wanted to be able to give them that experience. And I think through some of the feedback that we've already gotten from the parents, the girls absolutely loved the event and wish that they could have an opportunity to have it a week long. So, yeah. We have lots of community partners that are involved in our sessions, and they are listed here: BCSF, Tony London, Cummins, Toyota, Project Lead the Way, Heritage Fund, Columbus Robotics, Indiana University, the Rotary Club, and then Little Caesars, and of course C4 and BCSC. So through the community, we receive monetary support. We also receive partnerships to where we have volunteers. C4 prints our posters for us. The BCSC Food Services is involved. And then this year we went with Hot Box Pizza, and they ended up giving us a discount for the pizza. So the community itself is actually very involved in the program itself. The process, the planning, as I mentioned, the estimated cost is about $5,700 each year. We do receive the grant funding, and that comes mainly from Cummins, the Rotary Club, and then BCSF. And the leadership is the C4 teachers, and we do have an on-site nurse. The awareness, we create a flyer and send that out to the parents and having a registration for that. And then the volunteers receive a confirmation. There's several opportunities for the parents to receive confirmation and just information about the event, the logistics of the event. And then always after the event, we have surveys. And then I would like to actually back up and share the video from Friday evening's event so that you can see the excitement that actually takes place.
On Friday, October 25th, Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation proudly presented Girl Up, Sheroes of STEM, an inspiring event designed for 5th and 6th grade girls to explore non-traditional roles in science, technology, engineering, and math. With more than 180 girls in attendance, the evening kicked off with excitement as students gathered to meet mentors and role models from various STEM fields. The event was filled with hands-on STEM activities led by passionate volunteers from Cummins, Columbus Robotics, and the local community. Participants were able to dive into fields like architecture, biomedical sciences, culinary arts, engineering, fashion and textiles, graphic design, veterinary, and welding. Through interactive sessions, these young girls not only explored career paths, but also discovered their potential to make a difference in fields traditionally filled by men. The goal of Girl Up is to inspire, empower, and equip the next generation of Sheroes to pursue their dreams regardless of gender norms or barriers. The event was made possible through collaboration with BCSC's C4 program, the Bartholomew Consolidated School Foundation, Columbus Robotics, Columbus Sunrise Rotary Club, Cummins, Toyota Material and Handling, and the Tony London Company. Special thanks to these organizations for supporting our community's youth. Girl Up, Sheroes of STEM, where dreams meet opportunity, and together we learn.
First off, I would like to thank BCSC and Josh and his crew. They always do a great job of highlighting successful activities inside of BCSC, and do want to say thank you publicly to that. We say it privately a lot. At this time, I'd like to bring up two young ladies and let them introduce themselves and tell them a little bit about their experiences with the Girl Up, both as a 5th and 6th grader and as their high school years.
Hello, my name is Kaylee Coy. I'm currently a junior at Columbus North. I am in my 3rd year of the C4 Biomedical Sciences pathway. I take medical interventions with Mrs. Samantha Maroff, medical terminology with Mrs. Stacy Horn, and human anatomy and physiology with Mr. Laszlo Sarvis. After high school, I plan to attend Purdue University to study either radiology or nuclear pharmacy.
Hello, my name is Danielle Ashton. I'm a senior at Columbus East High School. I'm currently in my 3rd year of precision machining with my teacher, Mr. Foley, and then I take a culinary arts class with Chef Carey, and then I'm also in a CAD Chem class, which is an advanced manufacturing class with Mr. Foley as well. My plans for after high school, I'm stuck between 2 things right now. I plan to either do something with manufacturing or something with zoology, but I don't really know how to pick.
So I attended Girl Up when I was in the 5th grade in 2018, and that was the only year that I was able to go. I remember the construction and graphic design sessions the most. In the construction session, we built a playhouse. We got to use power tools like drills and nail guns. Through Girl Up, I learned that I'm not quite cut out for construction. I'm no longer allowed near scaffolding. I'm really passionate about STEM and supporting future women in STEM. So when I was presented with this opportunity to help with Girl Up this year, I was beyond excited. This is my first year helping and volunteering at the event, and I definitely want to do it again. The biggest takeaway I got from this event was seeing that the work that we were doing was genuinely impacting these young girls. I feel that women in STEM are very underrepresented. I want little girls to know that they can like the color pink and still be an engineer. Girl Up is such an amazing event, and it exposes young girls to careers in STEM. Doing Girl Up in the 5th grade inspired me to choose a STEM career, and now I'm on my way to a career in the medical field.
I participated in Girl Up in 2018 when I was in 6th grade. Something like an activity that stuck along the way with me that I did when I was in Girl Up was we got to use like actual welders and like weld a little unicorn onto a little stand, and I'm pretty sure they did that this year as well. Another thing that we also got to do when I was attending it, we got to code our own little ladybug game on, I think it was called Scratch, and we got to put it on a little USB drive and take it home with us so then we could play on it if we had a little computer at home. I love being able to show people new things, so when I was introduced with this, I was pretty excited. I've helped with Girl Up for 3 years now. I think this program is really amazing for young girls because it really puts them out there and shows them everything that they can truly learn and just gives them so many different opportunities that they can see for the future that maybe they didn't know they already had.
Any questions or whatever? If not.
What questions do you have? Any questions? Comments? Logan, do you have anything? You're okay? Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you for taking the time to help some of the younger kids. 5th and 6th graders largely don't have any idea what they want to be when they grow up. And so the two of you and all the other kids that help them kind of take those blinders and close them up a little bit and find some direction. It's better that you help them than most of us adults, because they don't want to really listen to another adult tell them what to do. But when they see that kids, especially kids that might have gone to the same elementary school or middle school than them, you know, there's a lot of trust that they put in you. So I appreciate the work that you and all the other volunteers did to help them understand that they can do just about anything they want to do if they pick the right path, and picking a college is hard. So the best thing I can tell both of you is to take your time and really take a good look at all the schools that you can to really understand where you're going to get the best value.
Thank you both for your presentations. My daughter wanted to volunteer, and it was all filled up for her area. Like every girl, I think, wanted to help these young kids learn. It was pretty amazing to see, and I thank you, Josh, for making sure a not so flattering video of me made it into that cut. I really appreciate that. I was there on Friday. It was a really good event. And what was nice is there were a couple of girls that came in very unsure. You know, you could see like some tears in their eyes, and by the end, they had a fantastic time and were very excited about what they learned. And like there was just this spark that you got to see, and some kids that got to try something new for the first time. And it's like those things matter to kids for sure. So the role you all played, to Jason's point, is a really big one. And I think just continuing to grow this. I mean, your growth in this program is really pretty phenomenal. So very well done for a very low budget. I mean, you just do a really great job. Thank you.
Thank you, and we mentioned it briefly, but it wouldn't be possible without our teachers, because both the STEM teachers at the elementary and then the C4 teachers, and just working and making those connections and supporting the young ladies and the young girls to be able to reach their potential. So thank you to everybody.
Yeah. Boiler up, by the way. Okay. Next, we have school board member reports. Mr. Schultz, I'll start with you. Do you have anything?
Nothing from my committees. I believe CCIC meets next week.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nellen?
I have a couple. The High Ability Strategic Plan met for the first time this year, and for the first time with our new leader, Amy Ellsbury. And the High Ability, so far at this point this year, we have 1,306 students involved, I think K through 12, and I believe it includes kindergarten also. And I will add one of the creative things. Sometimes in school systems, people are required to be creative. Amy, through this program, has money for professional development, but there aren't subs available, so she's working the professional development into the 4 professional development days as much as they can. So she hasn't given up on professional development. She found a way to repackage it. Oh, and my other one, sorry. The Council for Youth Development met on October 2nd. I'll highlight 2 things from that meeting. One is, we met soon after Spark Spirit Week. And so the high school, through the Council for Youth Development, they develop high school leaders, which are called youth ambassadors. And the youth ambassadors went to the middle schools, Northside, Central, and Hauser, and worked with 706 students at those schools with different events during the week, and had sessions with them about how important it was to find what the spark was in their life to inspire them. So it was another case where it's older students working with younger students, which is great.
A couple quick items of note from the School Foundation. The School Foundation just met with its new executive director, Deepti, last Tuesday. The School Foundation is currently working on a new grant program to go out to teachers that will replace Donors Choose, as was used in the past. And that will certainly be the first priority after the Wizards game. So the goal of the foundation is to have those grant applications out to teachers soon after semester 2 starts. And then lastly, the Harlem Wizards, Sunday, November 10th at Columbus East, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Plenty of tickets still available, bcsfstars.org. And many thanks to those that have sponsored and donated things to the game so far, and certainly still space for more donors. And don't forget to get your tickets Sunday, November 10th, 2 to 4 at East.
The County Redevelopment Commission meets in November, so I don't have anything to report today. Mr. Steiner?
Not tonight, thank you.
Mr. Major?
So the first one I have is the Health Trust. Health Trust met. I'll just give one or two really big highlights. I know there's a presentation later on. So enrollment was about 1% up or less. So it's pretty flat. It looks like claims were up slightly and the pharmacy's up slightly. And I guess the biggest thing is for all of you out there, please take advantage of Dr. Klein and using the clinic for all teachers and families of teachers and administrators, janitors, cafeteria, bus drivers. So the other one is the Columbus Redevelopment Commission. They had an amazing 3-hour meeting. Most of their meetings are usually less than an hour. So it was very long, lots of engagement about the downtown entrance plaza. There was also some talk about the downtown 2030 plan. There was a significant conversation around the housing study. There was some more discussion around some mixed-use development that will be over near where Joe Willie's was, off Washington Street and 11th Street. Then some more discussion about public works. And then there's always a list of things that they like to just highlight, but those are the big ones right there that took up about 2.5 hours of the 3 hours of conversation. So.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to cabinet reports.
Good evening. Thank you for your time and attention. Dr. Stahlbaum and I will present our portion of this presentation from our seats. We'll have some guests come up to the podium here soon. So every year, annually, we give the board and the public an update on the operating referendum. Are we doing what we said we're going to do? What are the financials? Are the targets being met, et cetera? So that's the purpose of tonight's presentation between Dr. Stahlbaum and I and our guests here in a bit. As you recall, back in 2020, 61% of the voters approved a property tax referendum that was capped at 0.156 per $100 of assessed value. I'll mention that that's actually collect less than that because that is capped legislatively as assessed value climbs. So we actually capture a little bit less than that each of the years that has been approved as assessed value continues to increase. The primary purpose is to retain and recruit staff in BCSC, and we'll go through some data points with that and add some narratives here in a bit, and invest in student and staff safety and security. And then, as you recall, in the fall of 22, we dedicated 50% of the cost of elementary STEM teachers were added to the referendum. When we went to the public several years ago, we were very open and honest about our efforts to be transparent with these funds. And if you go to our website, there's a tab at the top that says Referendum 2020, and all of the data there is maintained on an annual basis at least. All of our financials, there's a couple of screenshots there at the bottom, is a very detailed explanation of what revenue is brought in and how it's spent. And then the larger graphic there is representation of our metrics and what we said we're going to do with the funds and what our targets are that we'll go through in some detail. So again, that is all available, updated on the website. If you go to bcscschools.org and look to the top right-hand side, there's a button that's clearly labeled for Referendum 2020. This time I'll turn this over to Dr. Stahlbaum, who will lead us on.
Thank Thank you, Dr. Busman. Through Q3, the operating referendum has contributed an additional $4.7 million to increased classified and certified employee salaries this year. Without the operating referendum, BCSC would be required to reduce our existing staff costs by 5.2%. As this graph demonstrates, BCSC continues to outpace the state of Indiana for our average teacher salary with the support of the operating referendum. Without the operating referendum, BCSC has demonstrated a below average salary in 22-23 and just slightly above the average salary in the 23-24 school year. In the subsequent slides, the Vice President of the Columbus Educators Association, Mandy Keel, will facilitate sharing the metrics and testimonials from our operating referendum goals as displayed on the screen. We will display these metrics again at the conclusion of the presentation and answer questions about the presentation at that time. So at this time, we appreciate Mandy's support and expertise, and she will continue with the presentation.
Thank you, and the rest of you can go ahead and come on up here as well and join me. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stahlbaum and Dr. Bozeman, and thank you to the board for having us here this evening. In looking at teacher retention first here, when we link certified teachers from the 22-23 school year to the 23-24 school year, BCSC's retention percentage was 92%. When we link staff from the 23-24 school year to the 24-25 school year, we have increased by a percentage point as we are now at a 93% retention rate for this current school year. As Dr. Stahlbaum stated earlier, without the operating referendum, our BCSC average teacher salary would not outpace the average teacher salary in the state of Indiana, which would threaten our ability to retain teachers. With us this evening are teachers Allison and Brett White, who collectively have over 50 years of invaluable teaching experience here in BCSC. And we are so lucky, especially as the high school basketball season is ramping up, that we have both of them here with us this evening. So we'll start with Brett first.
50 years. Thanks. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Brett White. I'm currently in my 28th year of teaching overall, my 26th year at Columbus North High School in the math department. I was just going to speak very briefly about the importance of teacher retention within our department. Having that consistency in our department allows us from year to year to look at our methods and our activities that we do in our classes. And see what improvements that we can make as we go from year to year. That is much more difficult to do when you start the year with 2, 3, 4 new teachers. So having that consistency allows us to carry things over from year to year without in some ways starting fresh. Another thing that I view as a positive with the consistency, a lot of times I have freshman and sophomore classes. And developing that relationship with those kids as freshmen and sophomores, the fact that the teachers are still there when they're juniors and when they're seniors, they come back to you. And so having that relationship and having those veteran teachers that they can lean on is something that's very important. Having that referendum money that we currently have has allowed us to create more competitive salaries, to encourage people to stick around in BCSC. And so for our math department, that's allowed us to stay more consistent the last few years, which has been a very large positive for us. So that stability has really been pivotal for us to look at our programs and make the improvements that we need to make.
Good evening. I'm Allison White. I've been teaching in BCSC for 26 years. This is my 26th year here. Both of my parents were also BCSC teachers. My dad had taught at Central for 39 years, and my mom taught at Taylorsville for a number of years before I was born. Brett and I have a couple of daughters that have both graduated from Columbus North High School recently, and our oldest, Madison, who graduated in 2021, is currently a senior and pursuing her education degree as well. So this is something that's pretty near and dear to our hearts. I'm going to speak just from a personal standpoint and a family aspect of how the referendum has helped our family, not only just with the day-to-day expenses that you might have, but it's also helped us to contribute to our daughter's college experience and pay and help contribute to that a little bit. Also, just for our planning for retirement in the future as well, the referendum goes, and helps with all of that as well. It's no secret that in the last decade or so, we've seen a huge decline in the amount of people and students going into public education. And so I think not only is it important for BCSC to maintain and keep the teachers that we have, but also to entice new graduates who are going into the education field as well as our daughter, to be competitive and to maintain a high standard for those people.
Thank you, Brett and Allison. Moving on to safety and training, our UDL framework focuses on understanding developmental assets and wellness strategies for all. Teachers receive professional development through various opportunities, such as our UDL Summer Institute, our book studies, and our corporation-wide professional development days. Even as every staff member receives professional development, 45% of teachers have received intentional training in developmental assets and wellness strategies. As the needs of our students change, this may be one metric to assess for changes in the future. The mental health provider metric represents the number of contracted services through external partnerships, such as those with Centerstone and Family Service. Due to temporary ESSER funding, we were able to triple our annual target during the 2021 through the 2024 school years. With the referendum funds, we are able to maintain partner services at double our target, with 21 during the 24-25 school year. We know mental health is crucial for our students and their families, and Sergeant Julie Q. Smith, one of our BCSC school resource officers, helps provide and connect our families with these wraparound services. And after attending a session with her during our last professional development day, I was personally reminded about how important SROs like Sergeant Smith are to our BCSC staff members as well.
That was a fun time. So as school resource officers, we spend most of our time serving three major functions in accordance with the National School Resource Officers Association standard. And that triad is, of course, law enforcement officer. We have public safety educator and informal counselor. I do think it would be a surprise to most people to know that of those three, as school resource officers, we spend most of our time right there in that informal counselor role. While we take the informal part of that pretty seriously, because there are moments where we have to refer out, we do spend a lot of time engaging our students, building relationships, that hallway time that we get with them in the mornings and in the cafeteria time that we get with them during the day. It's invaluable to what we do, and here's the major reason why, is that when we're building these relationships, we're also building trust. And when you build trust, you have a safer school community. So while on the surface you might see us in the hallways and, what are they doing? It's much deeper than what you're seeing right there. Something else that is happening also on a regular basis is that we communicate with Patrol Division of the Sheriff's Office and the Columbus Police Department. That collaboration that's happening all the time also allows for us to keep our kids safe in that when we don't have them in school, like on the weekends and when they come home from school, and if there's any kind of interaction that occurs with law enforcement, we regularly communicate with our patrol division to make sure that we're supporting our students when they've been involved in traumatic incidents outside of school, or if there's just something that we can support them on. Our other officers in this community are looking out for our kids in that way, and they're reaching out to us. And that collaboration, I would say, is unique to BCSC and unique to Columbus, Indiana, for what is going right for our kids.
Thank you, Sergeant Smith. Reliable transportation is important for students to engage in every instructional minute at our schools. So bus safety and routing are critical components of our district's infrastructure for students. The bus metrics demonstrate that we currently have 0 buses that are greater than 12 years old, and BCSC has 0% of driver routes unfilled. Our bus drivers are the first and last interaction for our students each day, and we thank them for their service to our corporation, community, and students. I first met Larry Mazzi when he drove a bus for our Bartholomew County History Tour field trip several years ago, and I have since requested him as our driver for that particular trip, as he also brings a wealth of knowledge about our community and its history. So I welcome Larry.
My name's Larry Mazzi, as it said, and I have been BCSC bus driver for 10 years, and very proud of it. I love our kids, and really I think that's a solid theme with bus drivers and monitors. We're here to support the school system, as we've said, by transporting our kids safely to and from school. The referendum, and I went through that process as a leader in with the Bus Driver Association, was very important. Primarily, we saw out of it a bump in our wage per hour. We got $2 increase per hour as drivers, and monitors got $1, and that was very important because we were tracking behind local communities in wage, and we had folks leaving us. So now what we have is the ability to go, and it has been done as the numbers indicate, to recruit and hire and then retain drivers. What that gives us are drivers assigned to permanent routes, and as you all know, a driver has a relationship with all those students that they haul, and it's an important relationship that not only is there as another counselor, but also somebody that adds control to that trip to and from their homes and school. The other major area that drivers have benefited in are students, and that is our equipment. Buses were old, we didn't have seat belts. All our new buses have seat belts. This gives students an opportunity to be safe, as well as driver control when a student is in their seat, not bouncing around the bus. The other piece that we have, and there are several that the buses have had, are cameras. And the external cameras on the buses are important because they allow you to look at that 10-foot danger zone all around the bus for loading and unloading. So those are just a couple of ways that the referendum has positively impacted our students for their safety, and also additional relationship, and the schools themselves. Thank you so much.
As this metric states, BCSC is proud to share that 100% of our elementary STEM labs are staffed with certified teachers to provide all students with weekly hands-on STEM activities. Lucy Hummer is a former Southside Mustang who is going to share how these elementary STEM experiences have personally impacted her.
Hello everyone, my name is Lucy Hummer, like she said. I'm currently a 7th grader at Central Middle School who joined in-person BCSC in 4th grade. During my time in Southside Elementary, STEM was an important part of my week. The STEM program taught me to build, plan, and code while leveling the curriculum difficulty accordingly based off of our competency with engineering and coding skills, which our competency kind of changed grade per grade. I remember in 4th grade, we definitely were not, just as a class, really super ready for incredibly difficult coding, but we definitely got there by the end of 6th grade. We had a really great curriculum with my teacher, Miss Caitlin Yancey. She was really a great teacher, and she taught us very well how to code and plan and make models. While in the elementary STEM classes, I learned 2 coding languages, Scratch and Java, and many important coding skills. Because of my positive experience with STEM in general, in 6th grade, I decided to join Southside VEC's robotics team. When I joined, it was the team's first official year, and I had the roles of competition strategist, robot driver, documenter, and robot builder. It was during this robotics season that I began to experiment with a more professional and advanced version of engineering. From my first year in the VEX program, I was also exposed to much more in-depth versions of what we had learned before. As my role in documenter, I was overall exposed to every part of the competitions as coding and building and driving, which were all very important to my growth in engineering. This inspired me to keep going with robotics, and it also helped me go in middle school. Sorry, I got a little lost there. My experiences with engineering and robotics through the STEM and VEX program have, by pushing my engineering skills, even inspired me to have a possible robotics career in the future. Especially considering our relations with engineering-type businesses in our community, such as Cummins and LHP, I think that these opportunities for children in BCSC are incredibly important. The next generation of the workforce should be exposed to career paths that are of interest to them. Finally, skills taught and valued in engineering and robotics, such as trial and error, drafting and planning, and precision, can be translated into almost any profession, thereby preparing those involved in STEM for future experiences and occupations.
Thank you, Lucy. She also happens to be a former student of mine, so I'm super proud of her. As we review the goals again of the operating referendum, I could have easily filled this room with BCSC staff and students to speak about the positive impact that any number of these has had and continues to have on them directly or indirectly. Additionally, the referendum has allowed BCSC to recruit and retain quality staff members who bring a wealth of experience to our corporation, which ultimately benefits both our students and our community as a whole. And I'll finish with a focus on that word, community. I believe one of our CEA members said it best when she shared that when our community voted in favor of the referendum in 2020, it made her feel that we are valued and appreciated for what we do every single day. And I would also add that we in BCSC are forever grateful for that community support of our operating referendum. Thank you.
Happy to answer questions you may have.
Okay. I have one question. The one item on that list, I don't know if I understand to the right level of detail, is the trained in wellness strategies. Can you say a little bit more about what the content of that training is, just so I understand that correctly?
Yeah, we're going to invite Dr. Laura Hack up to the podium.
Okay. It's like she knew that was her question, Erin. She was moving before you even said her name.
We were so appreciative of the PD days that have been offered within BCSC. And so within those PD days, we do offer wellness strategies and sessions for our teachers to go to. So for example, Brian Dinks last year spoke to everyone about wellness. And so we did have that opportunity for him to do a keynote where he talked about wellness strategies, but then teachers could actually go into different groups, different classrooms, and learn more if they so choose to do that. We've also had book studies around the science of happiness, and so that's been a very popular course for our teachers to take. We've had opportunities for wellness specialists to learn from others within the corporation that might have wisdom and knowledge around wellness strategies. We've had opportunities for continued UDL strategies inside the UDL Institute, where we focus on wellness there for our teachers to attend. And then also teachers may just take advantage on their own to go to a seminar, go to a conference, just on their own accord. So we have many people who have wellness at the forefront of their mind when we're thinking about teachers and students, and then how do we continue to engage with them so that they're developed.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm just going to add to that on the second and third line there, both mental health providers and wellness strategies. Those are the areas we worked really hard putting this together in 2019, thinking, these are going to be the areas that we need to invest money in resources in the long term. But those are really the two areas that are the needs of our students and staff have changed since 2019, obviously through the pandemic and then coming out of the pandemic. So those are two areas that we're actively working on those measurements and the metrics for those to possibly come to you in the next 6 to 12 months with some changes to those as the needs of our kids have changed.
So I have a question, but I have a couple comments first. So you mentioned the teacher shortage. I guess just to underline how important that was, at the risk of getting involved in age. I actually hired Brett White, and back then when you hired teachers, math teachers, there were always fewer than other disciplines, but we would get 10 or 12 applicants and you picked the best one, and we got the best one there. But in more recent years, particularly in math and some other tough subjects, you're excited if you get one certified applicant to apply. So the fact that we're retaining teachers is huge. And in terms of retaining bus drivers, I don't know the data, but I hear about other districts around that have a huge problem keeping bus routes covered, and even looking at, there are districts that have gone to staggered starts of elementary because they can't get enough bus drivers. But the other piece of that, I'm glad it was mentioned, that the relationship that bus drivers have. That's near and dear to my heart because my connection with education was my mother was a bus driver. And by having the same bus driver, even beyond 1 year, the kids really do develop great relationships. It's part of their school day. My question, and I should probably know the answer to this, but reading the fund policies we got to read through before this meeting, it prompted this reminder in me. It mentioned CPR, required CPR training. At one time, teachers had to pay for that. Is that still the case? Did teachers pay for their own CPR training?
They do. That's right.
So my question is that we might consider, since that's certainly a safety thing, I wonder if it's possible to use referendum funding to pay for teachers' CPR training. I'll just throw that out there.
Could that not become a PD day?
Well, it's a pretty long, and it's quite a few hours. I don't know how that would fit in. And I don't know the details. I know there's cost to hiring people, but it would be one more way to take a burden off teachers that, we require this of them, but by the way, you have to pay for it.
Well, I will preface my question and my comment by saying I will do my absolute best, knowing that I only have this meeting and 2 more, to temper my comments. But the one slide on teacher average salary, I'll save my editorializing for my comment, but I've never been a real big fan. I understand the average or the necessity of using that as a statistic, but I think an even more telling statistic might be the salary range for teachers in BCSC pre-referendum to now. And would any of you know a ballpark salary range pre-referendum as compared to current? Ballpark.
I do. Ballpark would have been 38,000 to 72,000. That sound about right, Mandy? And then post-referendum, now we're at $50,950 at the starting salary. And that does not include referendum. That assumes you have no experience whatsoever. And then up to, is it 96? Around 96,000 at the top of the scale. That does include the maximum of a $15,000 increase for experience through the operating referendum.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Because I always think, as a new teacher, where am I going to start as compared to where I would start at other corporations? And if I stay in this corporation, what could I potentially earn by the end of my career? And so that's, 38 to 72, 51 to 96 is a substantial gain, thanks to the referendum as well. And the last thing that I'll say is the board's legislative liaison for the last couple of years, I know that there are already proposals already drafted, ready to move in the state legislature to divert even more funding from public schools to help support private parochial tuition support. And so, and each day that I look at the daily news from the School Boards Association, there's another corporation that is looking at a referendum, and I just can't help but think how many of these, there's an absolute relationship there. I would say it's causal between, the current state legislature and where the funding is continuing to go, making such referendums absolutely necessary in more and more corporations across the state. I could go on. I will stop.
Thank you. As we finish out this side of the table, Logan, did you have anything you wanted to chime in on?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The one question I had was, is the referendum, and jog my memory here, is it still not assisting teachers with under 5 years of experience?
That's correct. So the model is that teachers with BCSC experience earn 1 point for every year of BCSC experience, and after their 5th point, the following year they receive a $5,000 increase. After 10 points, it's $10,000, and after 15 points, it's $15,000. That's up to a maximum, so it's not to exceed that 96 maximum. So the referendum pay can be decreased to reach the maximum. For anyone with out of district experience, we give 1 point for every 3 years. And so if you had 15 years of experience in another district, you would have those 5 points and receive the $5,000 increase.
So I guess my concern here is, and I know I've met with Mandy, I've talked with a few other teachers about this, is at least from my understanding of how the system works, because a lot of the other districts also tend to not honor one-to-one on years of experience. Actually, I think it's an industry standard not to. That the lowest experienced population is the highest risk of retention loss. And so I guess I'm still interested to see why the referendum dollars were not used there, given that we're trying to attract, I mean, I know Ms. White, I think, just mentioned about her daughter coming out, and right, as you're trying to attract new college students that are coming into the profession, those are the ones that are most likely at your flight risk, as they have not earned a sufficient number of years of experience within the corp to where, you know, it may be worth their while to transfer to another district based on some minor pay changes within the band. So I guess that's just feedback as we look to leverage this referendum going forward. And then I do have a question, unless you have a comment on that, Chad.
No, go ahead.
So I was actually talking to a couple of constituents a couple days ago, and they brought me some stats, and I did confirm them, and I really do appreciate the transparency being posted. I think that's honestly a benchmark of how we operate our finances, and I holistically agree with everything that was said here by the Whites, by Larry, by Julie, about making sure that our SROs, our STEMs, bus drivers, teachers, TAs, I don't think were included, but TAs as well, to be fully funded. The question that was brought up is from 2021 to 2023, according to those records, about 21.6 million was paid out to those specific categories. However, the cash reserves across all these same funds grew by about 14.6 million. So I'm asking it really on behalf of them. They were concerned is, in reality, 67% could have been covered by education fund, operations fund, or reserve funds in the referendum, rather than adding on to those reserve funds. So I guess from my concern here is just as a matter of managing this budget is, how are we looking to leverage that rather than build up reserves going forward?
Logan, can you say that last part of 14? You said 14.
Yeah. So yeah, here. Yeah, 21.6 million was paid out to teachers, SROs, STEM, bus drivers, and TAs, right? And across that same time period, 21 to 23, the cash reserves grew by 14.6 across those respective funds. So if we look at, like, for example, right, you and I both know we transfer about $8 million out of the education fund, which is the teacher's budget, into the operations fund. Both are growing reserves right now. So from a tax standpoint, right, is all these reserves are growing across all these funds, but we've stacked a referendum, and essentially the constituent was asking me, you know, is it necessary? And I holistically agree with everything that was said here. Like, we want to make sure our teachers are paid, and paid at the state highest, and making sure that we can retain them, keep them. Same with bus drivers, like what Larry said. Same with making sure we have the state-of-the-art technology. But the question is when the reserves are growing at 2/3 the rate of what we're paying, I guess the question from them was, is it all necessary, or is it essentially to build reserves?
Thanks. That's really a valid question to ask, and I understand why someone would look at it and ask that. I'll say two items. Yes, we could have, well, I'll answer your question first. Yes, I believe it was necessary and continues to be necessary, but essentially what we could have done is done about 2/3 then of what we have done over the last 4 years, and run all of our cash balances to zero in all of our funds.
I only, just so you know, I only showed the increase in the cash funds, so it wouldn't have been to zero, it would just been to 2021 levels.
Thank you. Which I'm assuming if you got them to those levels, we may have had about one more year of referendum money that could have been paid with cash balance instead. So at the end of next year or so, somewhere around that time frame, we would have run all of our balances to zero. The other thing that I do want to point out with the cash balances that we've been talking about for the better part of at least 3 years, in recognition that they have grown in an unexpected manner. That part of that is due to conservative budgeting, but part of it is also due over the last 2 years to just interest rates being much higher than what we expected, and adding a couple of $1 million to those balances. The other thing I do want to point out, not that it's directly related to the question that you asked, but Larry mentioned before the safety apparatus is on our buses. And one of the things that this board did a couple of years ago was unanimously and very easily say, we need to put those stop arm cameras on our buses in addition to all of the other safety equipment we have. And we couldn't make a decision that quickly and with that much agility for an organization of our size if we didn't have cash balances, at least of some substance like we do now, because that's what we essentially ate into that year, was saying, let's use some of that cash balance and do an additional appropriation to make those, at least as safe as we possibly can, those stop arms on the buses. So that's only tangentially related to your question, Logan, but I hope that helps at least some.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is, as we look forward, right, is, and this constituent shared similar feelings to me, right, we want everything that was just shown here. Like, no one wants teachers not to be retained. No one wants to make sure that we're leading the market in pay, that we'd have buses that are unsafe, and that we don't have agility. I think the concern is, are we doing it to build cash reserves? And I don't think we are intentionally. I think we benefited, and Chad, I think you alluded to it, we benefited from property assessments going up and really kind of getting an unanticipated windfall of property tax revenues, which is really, I think, what drove, I think we discussed it 2 or 3 meetings ago, what drove the operations fund reserves to increase exponentially. I just think at this point, I think we have an ability to look into these goals further and challenge ourselves now that we have this referendum funds with additional windfalls from other funds. How do we leverage it to even better further the corporation? I think, one thing that I've heard is a little bit of fear both ways, but I'm not fearful of trying to see how do we go after that 0 to 5 teacher population. I think that's the highest risk that I call out. Or, how do we go further into SROs and safety, just given all the threats and risks that we've heard of in the last 6 months, or especially around the nation. So I guess that's what I'm saying is it feels like we're kind of being a little conservative, but that's okay to some degree. But I think it may be when you're hitting 35-ish million on reserves on I think it's 168 million budget. That's where I was trying to see is I think going away from this and being creative with those funds to deliver even further on these goals is necessary.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can you come back to me? So kind of to dovetail off of Logan's first question about the 0 to 5 year teachers, or 0 to 4 years, I see that as a concern myself too, but I think some interesting data. So we see the overall retention rate, but I think it might be good for us to look at pre-referendum and post-referendum. What is the retention? Maybe lump them as 0 to 4 teachers, or maybe 0 to 2 and 3 and 4 or something. But to look at, did it specifically impact those teachers, knowing that it's out there, even though they're not benefiting at that time? And it may or may not. We don't know what the data will say, but it'd be worth looking at.
I'll just say anecdotally, sorry, Mandy, we've had this debate since 2020. There were some board members that felt strongly we should invest some of that money. And in the first contract we had after the referendum, we did give a stipend with those dollars, but to 0 through 4 year teachers. The one thing that I continue to revisit is that if you spend the money on people before they stay and they leave, that money is ineffective. And I'm going to use bad data practice here and use anecdotal information. And Dr. Stahlbaum can correct me if I'm completely off base. But our youngest teachers who leave tend to leave for reasons other than money. They leave because they're going back to their hometown where a job opened up that there wasn't a job there when they took the job here. They leave because a spouse gets relocated. They usually stay in the profession unless it's just a completely bad fit. But the area that we really want to reward people for staying is when you start to hit that 5 year point, is when once we get people to stay for a few years past that, they tend to stay in BCSC and Columbus for the rest of their career. There's very few of them that tend to leave after that, unless things are horrible from a financial situation and they can go get a lot more money somewhere else. And so that's kind of the reasoning that we've used in the past, and we can certainly continue to revisit that, and we do through bargaining with CEA.
Which that's what I was going to say, that this is all subject to collective bargaining, which we would do again next year, and so that could be certainly part of the conversation. I would also say that during our last bargaining session a year ago, we really targeted that starting salary in BCSC to try to make that competitive, and I believe we are at almost 51,000. So that is certainly a way that we've targeted those early starting teachers, is by having that competitive starting salary too. But again, all of this would be subject to collective bargaining when we do that again next year.
Good discussion. Mr. Steiner, did you have anything you asked?
Sure. Great information. Appreciate the presentation, especially Ms. Hummer's contributions on STEM experiences. In some of the information that we've seen, I'd love to know how we're doing. I keep asking myself in the back of my head, how are we doing compared to peers? So, you know, we've gone from 80-some% retention into the low 90s now. How does that compare to other school corporations in the same geography as us? Or how does it compare to school corporations that are about as big as us? I like to think that, you know, the money has really helped us, and the way we've spent it has been strategic and has helped bump those retention numbers. But without knowing how other corporations are doing, it takes a little bit away from it. So, and that data is probably out there. I was wondering the same thing too about age of buses, bus driver openings. I remember at one point we were losing bus drivers, I think, to Jackson County corporations that were able to pay more. And I wonder if we've stopped that, or has that been reversed, things like that. Thank you.
Mr. Major?
Yeah, similar to everybody else, I want to thank all the speakers tonight that are still standing. You can probably all take a seat if you want, unless you're tired from sitting all day. But I am a little disappointed that Lucy left, because I wanted her to hear that that was probably one of the best student speakers I've heard. Very poised, very composed. Didn't even need to look at her notes much, so I appreciate that, and you know, I wish she would have stayed just a few more minutes to hear that, but hopefully somebody watching or that knows her might convey that message to her, and I'm assuming that was her dad.
I will make sure to pass along to her that she needs to go back and watch the YouTube video.
Yeah, it's 7:43 p.m., so whatever that is, an hour and 43 minutes. So, but yeah, I very much appreciate that, you know, especially out of middle schooler. It's hard for, how many times have we seen adults struggle with getting the words out because they're not comfortable speaking, so she's definitely going to be fine with her career. One question I have is, so to Logan's point and to others, I've heard so many things in the last month about referendum. I've had friends, I've had teachers, I've had community members all thinking that everything that's going on politically outside of here is gonna, the referendum's gonna come to an end tomorrow, right? The referendum is not getting voted on till when, 2028?
At the latest, right. That's the last year.
And so likely, there could be complete turnover of everybody here on this board today that will vote 3 to 4 years from now. So I know there's just a lot of people out there, this is on their mind. Your money is not going away anytime soon. And then it really comes down to that 61.3% of the community members voting on that. So, you know, there's no need to worry today. We need to make sure that over the next 3 or 4 years, we understand our finances to a point where, you know, how can we, you know, I mentioned last time to Todd about how do we work with the Indianapolis, the State House, to understand how we can work on growing, for example, our operations budget. Our operations fund is limited at this point in time, and we keep taking money from education to put into operations, which then had less money in education, which means fill that back up with referendum. And so how do we get to a point where we're able to get an adequate amount of money for operations, we're able to use what we have for education, give the teachers what they need and deserve, along with the teachers' aides and all other BCSC employees, so that they can end up having great careers here. It would be good too, to what Rich mentioned earlier about comparative analysis and benchmarking, to have some statistical analysis looked at internally and externally to understand from a retention rate, what is our average years of service today? So that $67,000, $68,000 average we have today could be because we have a lot more employees at the 15 to 20 year mark. If we had a heavy load at 25 to 30 years, we should be worried because they're likely to retire soon. And so I think it'd be good to take a strong look at the composition of years of service of our employees so that we understand where we need to put the money, because if I understand that they may leave, but at the same time, if we don't take a chance on them, that may be why they left. So a lot of things strategically and tactically that can be done. It takes a lot of conversation, but it's not going to happen right now. So.
Can I add just one more thing to that? Because I know there has been conversation about that money that is transferred from the education fund to operations, and every time we bargain, that is actually on our checklist of items to review in terms of, are the school corporations transferring what is within a recommended percentage of those funds? And having been on several bargaining teams, I can assure everybody that's here that BCSC is well within what the state would recommend in terms of that overall percentage that is being transferred from the education fund to operations. And that is something that ISTA has us look at as the bargaining teams too. So.
Yeah, and I'm not, just so you know, I'm not challenging that we're transferring. I'm challenging that the state will not allow you to put your operations fund at the right level to fund us today. That requires us to be, that we now have to transfer to cover that. And so that's my problem with this whole scenario is, if the state would fix it, and if we're lobbying and doing everything we can to push, we've got Ryan Lauer, Greg Walker, somebody should be talking to those two people all the time about, hey, how can we get the state to look at how they're funding operations and education so that we can be properly funded, not moving money and not risking your referendum in the future. Because to the point made earlier about property taxes have skyrocketed. I don't think anybody in this room will say, I'd be happy to pay more property taxes. Now, I think there's reasons why we would be happy to pay. In this case, 61% of the people were happy to pay teachers more money for more property taxes. But in general, I think that's where, if we can work on the state to try and get this ship going the right direction, it'll help us out a lot, and then you don't have to risk a referendum in the future.
Thank you, Mrs. Keel. Thank you, team. Okay, IREAD. Dr. Hack.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide an update on foundational reading skills for our current third graders in BCSC. As a recap, this should be a slide that you've seen before. Here's some exciting data about our second graders who took IREAD 3 and are now sitting in our third grade classrooms. We reported that 363 of these students passed IREAD during their second grade year at a 45% passing rate. That's positive news. We also projected that we have another 131 students on track to pass this spring based on their second grade scores, again positive. However, we did recognize the challenges ahead, that 318 of our current third graders were at risk of not having basic foundational reading skills. And out of those, 106 students have a score of 365 on their first IREAD test, which is a positive indicator that they are likely to pass on their second attempt. Of the 318 at-risk students, 68 have an IEP and qualify for a good cause exemption. And while good cause exemption students will continue testing until they pass IREAD or transition out of our elementary schools, they will not be retained in third grade if in fact they do not pass. Unfortunately, they still count as a fail for the school and the district. Additionally, 27 students are English language learners and have been receiving services for less than 2 years. These students are still in the early stages of learning to speak, read, and write in English, and do qualify for a good cause exemption. We are excited to support their language development as they work towards proficiency. So that brings us to current data. This is a new slide. NWEA is a test given to students across 8 of our elementary schools. Teachers utilize this data as another piece of the whole child review, helping them understand where each child is in their learning journey and what steps are needed to guide them forward. Of the 318 students identified at risk, 193 took NWEA in August or September. Others took a different assessment called the iLearn checkpoint and that will come up later in this presentation. Of those 193 students, 28 are at or above proficiency, scoring at least 48% on NWEA, which indicates to us that they are most likely to pass IREAD. 165 are scoring below proficiency, meaning that they will continue to need extra intentional boost in both in and out of the classroom. Teachers will keep finding the best fit for targeted interventions such as book buddies, fluency checks, sending home additional resources for family support, and ongoing progress monitoring in the classroom. 3 schools took iLearn checkpoints. Those are Richards, Southside, and Taylorsville. As mentioned, 125 of these students took a different assessment other than NWEA. They participated in the iLearn Checkpoint pilot program, and this gives us information about their progress. Of those 125 students participating in the checkpoints, 10 are showing strong foundational reading skills, either approaching or achieving proficiency, and we predict that these students will pass IREAD. The remaining 115 students are still below proficiency, so, like with NWEA, we continue to focus on their needs and work toward the goal of helping them become those fluent readers. As we move forward, it's crucial that we not only track progress, but we continue to be proactive with targeted actions. We are committed to intentionally analyzing each student's data. And since the IREAD scores were released last spring, we have been monitoring these students and their growth. We are focusing on increasing book buddy volunteers, collaborating with CCIC, and leveraging our literacy cadre across schools like Fadria, Mount Healthy, Parkside, and Richards. We're continuing to offer professional development to all elementary staff in the science of reading, and what that means is that we will help them better understand how students develop their reading and writing skills. So now, let's bring all this data together. Here's what we are projecting for this spring. As of today, based on current indicators, and that means with no further instruction or interventions, which of course is not going to happen in our classrooms. As of September, with the data presented, we expect 74% of our students to pass IREAD. Now, don't be alarmed because we have work to do, and guess what? We have time to get there. I remain optimistic, and we will continue to make significant gains. Our administrators and teachers are working diligently to make sure that each student gets what they need. Looking ahead, we have important steps to take. This winter, we'll conduct another round of assessments that will give us another picture on how our students are progressing and the impact of these interventions. More importantly, it will help us fine-tune our focus for additional support before the spring before the IREAD test window opens. I'm confident these targeted interventions in reading are making a real impact on the lives of our students. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
What questions do we have?
What strikes me about this is the fluid nature as we're moving through the programs, are we able to track the effectiveness of some of the interventions that we're trying in real time so that we know this intervention's really working for us, or that intervention maybe we let drop by the wayside and replace with something new?
Right, absolutely. At the school level and at the teacher level, our teachers are tuned in to making sure that they group students by their needs and then progress monitors weekly or bi-weekly to make sure that intervention worked. And then as students move out of that intervention, what's next for them? So every student in the classroom is getting kid by kid, skill by skill support. And that's exactly what we do. This intervention's working. This one may not be working for this week, 2-week period. What do we need to do differently?
And then are we able to, not that I'd want to see it in a school board meeting necessarily, but are we able to track demographics about here are some of the commonalities of the students that are in that 220 to 280 number?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. We can take those students and really dig into what their demographics look like and then help support that as well. Do they need extra support with having one-on-one intervention time? Do they need just additional time working with a teacher on their language skills? Do they need support in speech? So there are different ways that we can slice that data to help understand who these students are.
And I realize that things have already changed from the last time we went through this process. But the 74% on this slide, current prediction without any further additional intervention, how does that compare to where we were in the 23-24 school year?
We didn't have a comparison, and if we did, it was with all of our students within NWEA, and now we've taken out 3 for the pilot. So we don't have that comparison data because it's not apples to apples at this time.
Thank you.
But again, I want to point out that if we had stopped school in September, we feel 74% of our students would have passed IREAD with no interventions and no extra teaching, which is just not going to happen. We're working hard. I feel like we're going to take this test in the winter and have a different number that's higher than 74 come January.
Other questions?
Yep. First of all, I want to thank you for showing us this data. I mean, this is one of the things that I had hoped to see. Instead of waiting until next year and getting our IREAD scores, we see how we're progressing. I realize it's some prediction involved, but it really does give us a picture of what's going on. But some of it was too fast for me to keep up with.
Sure.
So 40, I'm trying to picture that 74% as a building from something. So 45%, that includes the 45% that passed as second graders.
That's correct.
But then was there another percent that was predicted to pass at that point from the second grade test?
Yes, so those were second graders, now they're sitting in our third grade classrooms.
Okay.
And so that's the data that you're looking up on the screen right now. So if they were predicted to pass 318, we looked at their data because those are the ones that didn't pass. And so we looked at their NWEA data to determine if they're going to pass or not.
So I guess here's my question. The 74% is at the end of the first quarter, or roughly, fall testing. What would that percent predicted to pass have been at the start of school?
45%.
45%,
Right.
Okay. So
45%.
that growth is phenomenal.
Yes, we had 45% that passed. And so then August, September, they took that first assessment, and now we're at 74%.
Okay. And the 3 schools that are doing the pilot, is the assumption that if that pilot goes well, that all schools would use the IREAD checkpoints rather than NWEA?
The state will force checkpoints for next year, and then BCSC will look in the spring to determine if NWEA needs to be given in conjunction with iLearn checkpoints. That's a lot of testing for our students, and it may not be necessary. What we do know this year is every student in 3rd grade and 6th grade will get NWEA in the winter because we need it for high ability testing.
Okay. And finally, I have to plug Book Buddies here. Do you have, from this at-risk group, are there kids that would be in Book Buddies if you had more volunteers?
Always. We know that we can go a little deeper with our students' population going to Book Buddies if we have the volunteers.
So kids can be added to Book Buddies during the year if more volunteers show up?
Yes, they can.
Okay. So that may be part of our work.
Thank you for plugging that.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I had a similar thought, is from a predictive standpoint, using some, again, statistical analysis to take a look at whether kids are, you may not be able to look at the quality of Book Buddy's experience they get, but it's kind of binary, yes or no. Are they participating in Book Buddies or not? And then looking at their AR tests, and then combine that with assessments to be able to have that predictive analysis of whether or not you see them passing. And so I think you, not all of us, but you probably could see that, depending on what data you collect and whether you had a dashboard internally that would help us maybe put a predicted number up there instead of TBD. You might be able to say, based on where we're at, we're looking at possibly getting into the low 80s, right? It's never going to be guaranteed, but that then also just kind of reinforces the work that's being done to show that it's all good efforts, right?
And so that's what we're doing at those checkpoints. We're really looking and measuring right there in September to feel how confident are we, what number do we want to put in that column to make sure that our students are there, and then we'll do that again in December because we'll have another assessment.
Yep.
You referenced AR. Not all of our students take AR. Not all of our students are in Book Buddies, so there are some constants that we can count on, but there are some variants that we just can't count on because it's not happening in every school. I learn checkpoints happening in 3 and NWA happening in 8. So those two constants really help us. Otherwise, teachers may be doing some simple interventions or some simple work inside their classroom that's not universal to BCSC, and that causes a little bit of, I wonder what would happen with that.
Yep. Now, the next question I have is, when do you think you'll be able to present something similar for the math side of this?
So math NWEA has been completed, so we could tell you, we could look at that. We don't have a math assessment like IREAD that's forced students to take in 3rd grade. It would just be a NWA update on where we stand with our math.
Okay, thank you.
And then relationship to iLearn.
I had a question. Of the 220, how many of them have a GCE?
Good cause exemption, that's back on the first screen.
Just getting a little lost in the numbers.
So the current students right there, so we have the 68 plus the 27 at this point.
Okay, thank you. And then do you have access to that 74% and how it might compare to other schools?
We don't
share?
We don't. We just, that would be me calling different schools and say, how did your students do in the first administration of NWEA? Again, some take it in different windows, some take it in different looks, some take it in different capacities. So, but what I do know is we're very similar in BCSC, how we give that assessment. It may not be the same at Center Grove, Carmel. It just may not be the same in Bloomington. So to call them, I could say, how did your kids do on the first assessment of NWEA, and they could give me a number. I just don't know how reliable it would be to compare the two.
And next year, when every school has to do the benchmarks, or checkpoints, sorry, thank you.
No, you're fine.
We may get that data from the state. We just don't know at this time. But when everyone is doing it, we assume that data will be available.
Okay. Mr. Schultz, did you have anything?
I just had a comment and a question. So comment was, as Dr. Hack, I just really appreciate the thoroughness. This was a great detail of PowerPoint, detail analysis, and really probably beat out your last one, which was already at the top notch. So I really appreciate the level of detail your team's putting into this. The only question I had was the 220 that are still not projected to pass. And then obviously there's going to be a TBD checkpoint of that also in December. Is there anything on your mind that you're looking at potentially asking us for support of anything to help you get those 220 across the line?
I appreciate that. Again, we need that support. If there's any volunteers that can help sitting hip to hip with our students to give them that extra boost, that's always a big thing that can happen. We're asking for our families to continue to read with their students at night. We're asking them to play those word games. We're asking our teachers to continue to progress monitor. And anytime a student comes to us new, where are they with their reading, and how can we help them propel them forward? So those are some simple things. That's not monetary. It's not huge amounts of resources that we're asking for. It's just time and talent, and really engaging in the work in helping your own child, or maybe a neighbor, or even grandchild, just to say, how are you doing in reading? And really being encouraging and also excited about reading yourself.
Okay.
And we have discussed during the last CCIC meeting in September we just brainstormed that day ideas for how we can ensure that every K through 3, starting with 3rd grade and then 2nd grade next priority, 1st grade next priority, for the 176 days that we have students, how can we ensure that there is an experienced licensed teacher in that classroom for as many of those 176 days as possible, knowing that that's going to obviously be impactful. So started that brainstorming in September. We will continue it next week at the CCIC, and we may have some requests come before the board around, it could be anything from mentors to long-term permanent subs. We also had a follow-up meeting. I don't want to tease this too much, but we had a call with LHP, who's doing some data analysis work for us, and they had a preliminary finding that we gave them some feedback, and they're going to come back to us, and we're hoping to be able to bring you some information at the very latest in January to make a recommendation based on what we've asked them to do at this point is do backwards looking. So just looking back at prior years, what was the impact of pre-K on IREAD scores and other academic indicators for kids in the long run. And so based on what they tell us, if it works really well and there's statistically significant impact for a specific group of kids, we may bring you a recommendation in as early as January for how we staff for pre-K for next year. So we have a long list of things that we may bring before you to actually help directly impact these IREAD scores in the long run.
Thank you, Dr. Hack. Mr. Brenniger.
I'm first going to throw a little curveball at you. We're 95 minutes in. I know I'm a numbers guy, but I'm also a 20-plus year track coach. Stand up. Everybody stand up. Let's take a few deep breaths.
Okay, Coach.
Maybe swing around a little bit. Sitting for 90 minutes gets to you. I know that because it did me. Thank you.
Todd might get back down. You okay, Todd?
Thank you. Financially, BCSC is still very strong right now. If you look at our third quarter revenues, across the board, we're about 8% higher than we were through the first 3 quarters of last year. We're on pace to reach the budgeted revenue levels for the year. And again, revenues are up. A big part of that, as we've discussed, is higher assessments that have come in. Education fund expenditures, salaries and benefits are up about 8% over last year at this time. This is a result of the pay increases for all employee groups following the collective bargaining agreement last fall, the addition of the high school administrators for cohorts, and the continued success in filling positions. The other expenditures are up just a little over 1% compared to 2023. And again, we are on pace to stay within budget for the year. I will get this down, I promise. Operations fund expenditures. Salaries and benefits are up about 6% over 2023. Other expenditures are down actually 1% compared to 2023, but tracking to follow what we budgeted for the year. Operating referendum fund expenditures, they're all expending as budgeted. I don't want to beat this horse too much because they did such a great job earlier going through what we've been spending on. And finally, our fund cash balances.
cash balances in education, operations, operating referendum, the health dental trust are all up compared to last year. The revenues are driving those fund balance increases. And the debt service funds will continue to draw down slightly over the next year. But again, very solid, very healthy. And be glad to answer any questions anyone has.
What questions do we have? Mr. Schultz, I'll start with you this time. Do you have anything?
No questions. I was just going to say good use of the Northeast colors.
I was hoping someone would catch that.
Since I see Mr. Payne in here, I think it's central colors, actually, so thank you. I don't have any questions. I think we've talked about a lot of it, so thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
We're numbered out. Thank you, Mr. Brenniger.
Thank you all.
All right, next policy review. We have completed package 1, and so the first package of policies was posted for 14 days, did a first reading, and then a second reading and approved those. This is a first reading for package 2. That was posted 2 weeks ago today, and so those have been on the website on board docs for the last 2 weeks for public review. Those do contain, this is the largest, and I think it will be the largest package of policies that come before us. There are 13 policies proposed for reorganization and consolidation. And the consolidation definitely applies here because these 13 policies will replace all or part of approximately 50 of our existing policies. So getting rid of some of the redundancy and just the difficulty in navigating our current policies will be helpful. So this is the first reading tonight, and it'll be on a second reading in November. These are the 13 policies that are proposed, and there are a lot of HR heavy ones here. That's why they're the longer policies, and Dr. Stahlbaum spent a significant amount of time looking at each of these, trying to make sure that they matched up well with our existing policies. Here is page 2 of those policies, which are a little bit more of the less HR and more school related. So medical, search and seizure, background checks, resignation, SRO training. I will point out that is the only one. SRO training is the only one that is a new policy. It's a very short couple of paragraphs, but it was based on a piece of new Indiana code that was put into place. I did receive feedback from both Mr. Major and Mr. Nowlin on just a couple of suggestions on these. I think both agreed that there weren't anything that necessitated a board work session to make those adjustments. We will look at them before the end of this week and make sure that any of those changes are shared back out with any board members, as well as posted to the website before, at least a week before the second reading on November 11th. So thank you for that feedback. Any questions on the package 2 of the policy reorganization?
Any comments? Okay.
Thank you.
We do not have any public comments tonight, so we will move on to our next item, which is request for approval of old business. Since we do have a remote member, all votes will be roll call tonight, so I'll just go through each person in order and ask for your vote on any of the motions that are made this evening. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Whelan. Do request approval of the minutes of the regular school board meeting of September 23rd, 2024.
I move that we approve the minutes of our regular school board meeting from September 23rd.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Major. I'm going to start at this end of the table. So Mr. Major, let me back up because I'm so excited about my roll call. I forgot to ask if there are any questions or comments based on the motion. Okay. Thank you. So, motion was made to approve old business minutes from our September 23rd meeting. Mr. Majors, yea or nay? Mr. Stenner?
Aye.
I am also aye. Ms. Wield is aye. Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Nellen?
Aye.
Mr. Schultz?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. We also request approval of new business to include supplemental contracts, field trips and professional leaves, school fundraisers, and claims and payroll. The October 28th claims of just over 1.7 million, and the pre-runs from September of just under 4.9 million. And then the payrolls, we actually had 3 payrolls in this stretch, which is unusual for us. Those 3 payrolls totaled just over 11.9 million. Also, under new business, we have letter E, which is the approval of the 2025 health and dental premium and plan changes. Mr. Major referred to the health trust meeting. These are the recommendations of the health trust, and the only change is an overall total 1.6% increase in the health premium only, and that should generate just over $280,000 additional dollars in revenue to the health trust on about a $19 million annual spend, and results in a per pay increase of between $3 and $9 per paycheck for year-round employees for the employee portion of that. Also, under letter F, we request permission to receive bids for the Central Middle School renovation, which is the smallest of our projects that are going on right now, and that includes work in the wellness area, which is attached to the library, some upgrades to the library makerspace, and health science pathway lab, as well as furniture and technology updates. Letter G is approval of the K through 12 Indiana Department of Education K through 12 robotics competition grant, which is just about $91,000 that will go to jumpstart all of our robotics teams and create new robotics teams around the district. All of those dollars go towards only 2 items, and that is supplies for kits for robotics and entering those teams into competitions, so entry fees. And then last, under new business, letters H through L include the 5 resolutions required for the 2025 budget. The only note I will make, there are no changes to this from both the budget workshop and the budget hearing. The only thing I will note is because it has been a topic of conversation both in the public in the last few weeks as well as earlier tonight, just to give anyone in the audience and the board some background on the transfers between the education fund and the operations fund. That was a bill that was passed in 2017 that required schools to move a significant proportion of salaries and benefits that had been part of the general fund and required us to move those over to a new fund, the operations fund, which didn't exist before 2017, but it moved no revenues with those expenditures. So every custodian, which is just an example, all the custodians in the district, millions of dollars in salaries and benefits, all of those moved from the old general fund to the new operations fund, but no salary or no revenue went with them. And so the legislature obviously knew that would present a problem for districts and authorized the transfers of up to 15% of your education fund to move to the operations fund. Every year since that time, our move of dollars from the education fund has been under 10%, which is well below what the average of other districts. A part of that is because we're a large district. So you have a smaller district that has a department or a director of transportation, for example. They're a larger proportion of that overall budget. But that Indiana code that authorizes those transfers is 20-40-2-6. So anyone who's interested in looking at those. And then CEA has supported each of those transfer amounts. We share that amount with them as we calculate the budget, just so that they're aware of how much is being moved. And then there is a resolution, a unanimous resolution passed by the board for each of those years since then, looking back at history. So if you're interested in the history of that transfer between the Education Fund and Operations Fund. So sorry for the long explanation there, but letters H through L represent the 5 resolutions required to allow us to approve the budget. So at this time, I request approval of all new business items 8A through 8L.
I move that we approve all items listed under new business, letters A through L, as presented by Dr. Phillips.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Nager. Mr. Nowlin. Sorry about that.
Mrs. Wielden,
Yes.
before you move to a vote, we have had some discussion about silly state requirements tonight. For Mr. Schultz, the state statute on electronic participation notes that folks who are participating electronically may not vote on adopting a budget. So those items H through L that represent that part of it can either be pulled out and they could be voted on separately, or Mr. Schultz could, if the motion moves forward as presented, Mr. Schultz would not vote on it.
Okay.
And he could participate in discussion, would be fine, but the statute focuses on that voting on adopting a budget.
There's no risk tonight. You're fine. If Logan wants to just opt out.
Mr. Schultz, are you okay opting out of all A through L votes? Or would you
I
like us to-
trust you all fully. I'll sit on the sideline.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schultz. Okay, motion on the table is to approve 8A through L. Any questions or comments from the board before we move to a vote?
The only thing I have is this is a heck of a lot of money that's gone up over the last 2 years. So since I started, we went from the mid 140s to now the upper 160s. So it's about a $20 million increase. I understand why almost all of it has to be done, right? It's not that we have a lot of money that we have to pay. That's all there is to it. I think the concern I have is the transfer side of it and how we find a way to work with Indianapolis to get that fixed. So I just want to reiterate that. And then I think there's some things in the budget that are more nice to haves than need to haves. And I think that over the course of the next year, it would be nice to map out some of these things to better understand them. And I'll just give you one. All Columbus North is going to hate me for this, but do we need to spend $1.5 million on turfs? Maybe not today, right? But I understand the need for it. I understand wanting to make softball, baseball fields look great and wonderful. But I think it's just one of those things where over the last 3 or 4 years with inflation the way it's been, maybe that's something that we can defer till later. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, I will do roll call, starting at this side. Oh, we can vote together. Thank you. All those in favor of approving items 8A through L, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Vote passes.
Thank you.
5-0. Okay. Dr. Straubel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Board. The Human Resources recommendation for this evening consists of 3 appointments and 2 resignations. I request that you please approve the recommendations as presented in the board packet.
I move that we approve the HR recommendations as presented by Dr. Stahlbaum.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Major. Any questions, comments before we go to vote?
One quick question. Is staffing okay? I haven't looked at the website for a while. Yeah.
Really good.
Okay. All those in favor of approving item 9A, Human Resources Recommendations, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, nope. Nope, I'm back to roll call. Mr. Schultz? Yea or nay? Aye, okay, thank you. Mr. Major? Thank you. Mr. Stenner?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeldon is aye. Mr.
Aye.
Mr. Nell?
Aye.
Great. Passes 6-0. Dr. Staubholm?
Perfect. The additional human resources recommendation for this evening consists of 2 appointments. I request that you please approve the additional human resources recommendations as presented in the packet.
I move that we approve the additional HR recommendations as presented by Dr. Stahlbaum.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimson. Mr. Nallen? If you're in favor, please say aye. Mr. Oh, I was going to start with him.
Oh.
Mr. Nallen?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Wheeldon is aye. Mr. Stenner?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Major? Mr. Schultz?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Okay. Board input. Mr. Schultz, do you want to start?
No, I just want to say thank you to Mandy and also Dr. Phillips for presenting on the referendum. I think a lot of those are critical asks, and I know we're getting a lot of questions just given the time of the year, and so I'm happy to see the update. I think the only thing, Dr. Phillips, that I may ask going forward is on looking at the Title I schools and the free lunch funding. Can we see an update possibly in January or February, just seeing how that is trending? I know you've sent a couple items in your Friday notes. I just think it'd be good for the community to see that and potentially to see how that may or may not impact the IREAD scores. I know that's a large at-risk population, so only ask.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Major?
Just wanted to, obviously we're back now from fall break, but wanted to wish the best of luck to all the fall sports teams that are still active in fall sports in their respective state tournaments. Also wanted to say thank you to Kaylee, Danielle, and Lucy for their speaking tonight. Again, it's hard for kids to do that. It's hard for adults to do it. The other thing, just sitting here, we have these posters on our desk here. One thing I just noticed, I don't know, did we buy this from someone or did we design this? Mike, could we maybe try and get that copyright or something? It might be some IP for us, something that we could, maybe make some money off somewhere sometime in the future, just, marketing that to other schools. So it might be something creative. And the other thing too is for any of the kids that participated in that, being able to say that they've got their name on a copyright would be pretty cool. So just something to think about. And then we got these little keychains, I think it is too. So, and they've got Grow Up and C4 on them. So it's pretty cool stuff that the kids are doing. And I can tell you at 49 years old, I never would have thought about doing stuff like that when I was in high school. So good work. Thank you.
Again, as Mr. Major said, thanks to all the presenters tonight, especially Kaylee, Danielle, and Lucy. Really enjoyed the presentations. Thank you to Dr. Hack and her team for all the data. Both Drs. Hack and their teams for all the data that was shared tonight. Thank you.
I just want to thank the team for a balanced meeting today. I thought there were problems that we need to fix that we got to talk about and get updates on those. That was positive, and then a lot of the positives. I do want to, just like Mr. Nellen did earlier, put a plug for anybody watching or anybody in the room, just to look for ways to engage in our schools and in our kids. I was telling Dr. Stahlbaum earlier, I had a really terrible week at work last week, and on Friday when I left work and then drove up to North High School and thought, what have I gotten myself into? My head is not in the game. And I was exhausted by the time I got home, but I got so much more than I gave. And I just have to believe that that's so often the case when we give ourselves those opportunities and kind of put ourselves out there. So it was a good reminder for me that there's always a little more left in the tank, and hopefully maybe others can find that too. There's plenty to do. Mr. Grimes.
Quickly, lots and lots of individual accolades that could be shared. I'll just, at the risk of leaving some out, I'll share a few. East Senior Elena White, CSA Lincoln 6th grader, Emma Norton for winning the Mill Race Marathon poster contest, not content. The 3 Lilly Scholarship finalists from each of the 3 high schools, Northeast and CSA New Tech. Congratulations to North Senior, Hank Lynn, and his fabulous tennis accomplishments. North football coach Logan Haston for, I guess it's probably 2 weeks ago now, winning the Colts Coach of the Week, which is a really big deal. Congratulations to him. Like Mr. Major said, congrats to all fall sports and extracurriculars as they have either wrapped up their season, and best wishes to those still competing. Many thanks to all those that presented here this evening. And at the risk of being corny, what the heck, our roll call vote tempted me to say this, but a quick little joke. What did the pirate say on his 80th birthday? Aye, matey.
Okay, I need to recover first. Last week, I had the opportunity to go to a couple of the sessions for the Exhibit Columbus Symposium, and one of them was the high school team, and BCSC was represented amazingly well. So I want to give a shout out to the 4 students, Gloria Phillips, Bryce Olson, and Ashley Perez, who I think are all seniors, but they're from North, and Alex DePaul, who I think is a junior, but he's from East, and along with their faculty members, Darren Johnson from C4 and Davita Harden, who we heard from tonight, talking about what the 5th and 6th grade STEM, I think, how they get involved in the Exhibit Columbus. But particularly the 4 high school students just did an excellent job of sharing questions that were fired at them that they didn't have a chance to prepare for, and they handled it very well. The other thing is, so Mr. Major said it'd be great to hear something about math results. I will never turn down the opportunity to hear about math results, but I'm going to bring this up regularly, I think. Our 3 goals are IREAD, graduation rates, and STEM. Did I get that right? Those are our the 3 goals that Dr. Phillips came on board with. And tonight was a absolutely fabulous, what I would think of as a start of looking at that, digging deeper into, okay, this is what we're doing, how are we doing at that? And we saw that with the IREAD, predictive data, and we saw that with 2 different aspects of STEM, the Girl Up and the connection to the referendum. So the challenge is graduation rates. We don't have to wait until we get graduation rates. We can creatively think about ways we can be monitoring that prior to graduation. And along those lines, kudos to Dr. Phillips and the team. It would be real easy to look at IREAD and talk about 3rd graders, but we're talking about pre-K through 3rd, and I absolutely commend you for that.
Okay. Next meetings we have coming up. We have a November 11th work session in this building at 5:15 p.m. We have our regular board meeting on November 11th at 6:30 p.m. and it's not listed on here, but on December 2nd we do have an executive session for the board to focus on safety. Okay.
Well, thank you. The only thing I want to add is because Larry was here tonight, I think Larry's already gone, but I get to do lots of really cool things in this job that I didn't do a year ago. And one of them has been to ride the bus a couple of times, rode with Larry one day and also with Steve Moon. And I'm going to go away from the data and all of those kinds of things. There's probably some things I can share in regards to that with our bus drivers. But it was overwhelming to me to watch our bus drivers interact with our students, and our students interact with our bus drivers who've been on their route for a long time. It's not something you put a dollar value on or directly connect to scores, but we would pull up to a kid's house, and before the kid came out, the driver would tell me what was going on in that student's life and what things had happened to him and whether or not they'd just broken up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Could tell you everything about the kid, and as soon as the kid walks on, it was, "Hey, Larry," and dab him up and go sit down and do what they're supposed to do. And it just opened my eyes to the amazing people that we have working with us in all kinds of roles. So thanks, Larry and Steve and all the other bus drivers.
Okay. With that, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.